Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Elijah's penthouse, casting gold across Imani's warm skin. She blinked against the light, her body tangled in silk sheets, the weight of the diamond ring still new on her finger. For a second, it didn't feel real. The man she'd loved for years, her best friend, her heartbreak, her healing was now her fiancé. Elijah stirred beside her, one arm sliding around her waist. "You planning your escape already?" he murmured, voice still thick with sleep. She didn't answer immediately, just stared at the ring on her hand. "It feels heavier than I thought it would." He rolled onto his side, brushing his fingers along her bare back. "That's only because you think you're carrying it alone." She turned, eyes locking with his. "What if I mess this up?" "You won't," he said, no hesitation. "And even if you do, we fix it. That's what love is, right, Imani?" Let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her lips parted, and for the first time since she said yes, she allowed herself to believe it might be real. His hand rested over her heart, steady and warm. Grounding her, they lay there in silence, skin against skin, not speaking, just holding. The comfort in his arms felt like safety she never knew she needed. Later, standing by the floor to see windows in his robe, Imani watched the city wake up. The ring sparkled against the morning light, and something twisted in her chest. Love was never the hard part. Believing it could last, that was the real test. Elijah walked up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. "Where'd you go just now?" She leaned back into him. "Just thinking about how this doesn't feel like my life." "It is. You just spent too long surviving to recognize what joy feels like." She turned and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Then teach me." He kissed her, slow and deep, fingers trailing down her spine until the coffee in her hand nearly spilled. She set it down, and he picked her up like she weighed nothing, carrying her back to bed with a look that said everything he didn't need to say out loud. The rest of the morning was spent rediscovering each other's skin, each other's breath. Not rushed, not desperate, just deliberate, connected. Full of all the things they'd once been too afraid to speak, by afternoon, Imani returned to her apartment. She needed space to process the shift in her life. She sat on her bed, opened a worn shoebox filled with memories, and pulled out a crumpled journal page from years ago. "If I ever love Elijah the way I already do, someone please tell me to run." She laughed, even as her chest tightened. She hadn't run. She'd survived losing him, and still said yes when he came back. Her phone buzzed. Messages poured in. Amira, her cousins, her co-workers. Everyone had seen the ring. The world was already calling her lucky, but luck had never been kind to her. Love, even less. A knock came at the door. Elijah. He stepped inside with a pastry bag and a knowing smile. "Peace offering, chocolate croissant, still your favorite." "You're lucky I still like you," she smirked, taking it from him. He sat beside her on the couch. "I meant what I said this morning. You're not doing this alone." "I know," she whispered. "I just haven't figured out how to stop being scared." "Then be scared. Just don't walk away because of it." She stared at him. This man who had once broken her heart, and now wanted to build a life with her. Her hand found his. "Okay." He leaned in, and she didn't resist. Their lips met in a kiss that was quiet, but electric. And this time, it wasn't about making up for lost time or rushing to feel something. It was about choosing this moment, this love over every fear that came before it, and it felt right. Imani stood in front of the office mirror, adjusting the subtle curve of her pearl earrings. It was her first day back since the engagement, and she already knew eyes would follow her wherever she went. The office knew. The city probably knew. Elijah wasn't just her fiancé, he was one of the most talked about black millionaires on the East Coast. His name carried weight. Now her name was attached to his dot. She walked into the building with her head held high, heels clicking across the marble floor, but her stomach twisted with every step. Her team greeted her with polite smiles that felt tighter than usual. Someone muttered congratulations as she passed. Another whispered, "I guess being friends with the boss finally paid off." Imani ignored it, but the sting lingered. During her lunch break, She slipped outside to clear her head, only to catch a glimpse of Elijah's name flashing across her phone screen. It was a message, not a call. Had to take a last-minute lunch. With an old investor will call after she typed out a quick reply, hesitated, then hit send. Moments later, she spotted a gossip blog headline while scrolling. Elijah Monroe seen dining with ex-finance exec Lauren Blake back together. She froze, reading the caption 3 times. The photo showed Elijah sitting at a rooftop restaurant table with a woman she didn't recognize. Laughing, leaning in, she zoomed in. The woman had her hand on his wrist. Her mouth went dry. She tossed her phone back into her purse and walked fast, ignoring the building heat rising in her chest. She wasn't angry, not yet. But something sharp began to claw its way into her thoughts, whispering all the things she'd worked so hard to silence. Back at her desk, she tried to focus, but her fingers hovered over her keyboard, unmoving. She had no proof that the woman in the picture was anyone meaningful. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe it was business. But her gut twisted with the kind of instinct that only came from scars. That night, she sat in her apartment, staring at the screen. Again, the photo was now everywhere. Elijah Monroe seen laughing with former flame. The headlines were speculative, the sources unreliable. But still, they were loud. Her phone lit up. Elijah was calling. She let it ring twice before picking up. "Hey," she said, trying to sound normal. "Long day," he sighed. "Didn't get a chance to call earlier. Everything good?" "Yeah, just tired. You?" "Same," he replied. "The meeting ran late. I'll be up working late tonight some things. I need to finalize before the investors fly in." She hesitated. "Everything go okay?" He didn't catch the weight in her voice. "Yeah, nothing crazy. Just the usual politics." They hung up, minutes later. She stared at the wall, her heart quiet, but not calm. She wasn't upset because she believed he'd done something wrong. She was upset because her trust still trembled under pressure. She didn't want to question him. But the silence between what he said and what he didn't was loud enough to echo. The next day, Amira showed up at Imani's door with brunch and a look that meant she already knew. "I saw the blogs," she said, walking in like she lived there. "You gonna talk about it, or should I just start unpacking my therapist bag now?" Imani rolled her eyes, grabbed a croissant, and flopped on the couch. "There's nothing to talk about. It was probably business. But, it looked like more. And he didn't mention her." Amira studied her. "You trust him?" "I'm trying to," Imani whispered. "That's not what I asked." Imani sighed, deep and slow. "I do. But I also remember how easily love can fall apart. I remember being the girl who watched him walk away without looking back." Amira leaned forward. "You're not that girl anymore, and he's not that man. But you can't build something this real on fear, Imani, not again." Imani nodded, but the truth was heavier than advice. It pressed against her ribs like a weight she hadn't asked for. That evening, she stood in front of her mirror again. This time, no office, no co-workers. Just herself, the ring. And the woman in the reflection, wondering if she was enough for a man like Elijah Monroe. She whispered to herself, "This time, you don't run." She picked up her phone and texted him. "Can we talk, face to face?" Replied almost instantly. "Always, come over." She grabbed her coat, the ring flashing against the streetlights as she stepped out into the night. This wasn't about a tabloid. This wasn't about an ex or a blog post or whispers in office halls. This was about the voice inside her that still believed she could be loved, but also feared she could be left. And it was time to silence it. Elijah opened the door before she even knocked. He stood barefoot, in joggers and a loose black tee. His expression caught between relief and worry. Imani stepped in without a word. The warmth of the penthouse wrapped around her, but it did nothing to calm the fire in her chest. Elijah closed the door behind her, and for a moment, the silence held too much weight. She turned to face him, eyes locked. Who was she? His jaw clenched. "You saw the picture?" I saw more than a picture, she said. I saw the way she touched your wrist, the way you leaned in, and I saw the look on your face when I asked how your meeting went and you said nothing. It was Lauren, he admitted. She showed up last minute to represent the new investment group. I didn't know she was coming. Why didn't you just tell me? I didn't want you to get in your head about it, he said. Thought if I downplayed it, it wouldn't matter. But it does matter, Imani said. Not because I think you did something wrong, but because you didn't think I could handle the truth. He stepped forward. I was trying to protect you. No, she snapped, voice trembling. You were protecting yourself. From the possibility that I'd be angry. That I'd ask questions you didn't want to answer. He was quiet. Imani pulled the engagement ring from her finger, holding it in her palm. This isn't just a symbol of love, Elijah. It's a promise of honesty, too. He reached out slowly, closing her fingers around the ring. Then keep it, because I'm not letting you walk away from me over something I should have said. Earlier, I made a mistake. I'll own that. But I won't lose you again, because I didn't say something fast enough. She stared at him, her heart breaking open under the truth in his voice. There was no arrogance in his apology, no ego, just raw regret. I wanted to believe we were past this part, she said, her voice softer now. The hiding, the doubting. We are, but only if we face it. Together. She nodded slowly. Her chest still hurt, but the ring stayed in her hand. Her heart told her he was still the man she loved, not perfect, but fighting to be better. He stepped closer and placed his hands on her face. You are the only woman I've ever wanted to build with. Everything before you was a distraction, a placeholder. You're the plan. I don't need promises, she said. I need presence. Then I'm here. No more secrets. He kissed her, and this time there was no performance, no passion for passion's sake. It was aching, slow rebuilding. She wrapped her arms around his neck and let herself fall into him again. Later that night, curled together on the couch under a blanket, she laid her head on his chest and listened to the rhythm of his heartbeat. Do you still talk to her? She asked, double quotes. No, I haven't in years. And after today, I won't again. Imani was quiet. Imani, she doesn't have a piece of me, Elijah said. You do, all of me. She nodded, letting her fingers trail over his arm. I just need time to fully believe that. I'll wait. I'll prove it. She looked up at him, eyes glistening. I'm scared of being disappointed again. Of choosing you with my whole heart and being wrong. Then don't choose me with your whole heart yet, he said. Choose me one day at a time. That's all I need. Tears slipped down her cheek, not because she was broken, but because she was beginning to believe she might be safe. And for Imani, that was the most terrifying love of all. The boutique smelled like vanilla candles and high-end fabric. Lace gowns floated like clouds on silver racks, each one whispering promises of forever. Imani stood in front of a full-length mirror, wrapped in ivory silk, the train pooling around her feet like moonlight. She looked beautiful, elegant, glowing. But inside, her chest tightened with something she couldn't name. A mirror clapped her hands, spinning her phone around to take pictures. Girl, you look like you just stepped out of a bridal magazine. Imani smiled, but her reflection didn't smile back. Let's try the veil. The stylist offered, draping a sheer piece of tulle over her head. As it settled across her shoulders, Imani's breath caught. Suddenly, the room wasn't just mirrors and chandeliers, it was her mother's apartment. She was 10, hiding behind the door, watching her mum sob in her wedding dress. No groom. Vows, just a suitcase and a note that said I can't. Her fingers twitched. Imani Amira stepped forward. You good? Imani blinked fast. I just need a second. She walked quickly to the changing room, closing the door behind her. The dress suddenly felt too tight, the room too quiet. She sat on the small bench, heart racing. This wasn't just about Elijah, it was about every man who made promises and disappeared. It was about her father walking out. About watching her mother wear grief like a second skin for a decade. About believing, deep down, that forever was a fantasy for other people. Amira. knocked softly. "Want me to come in?" "No," Imani replied, voice barely audible. "I'm okay." But she wasn single quotes. She changed back into her jeans and tee, left the dress behind and stepped outside. The afternoon sun hitting her like a wake-up call. They grabbed lunch at a quiet spot nearby, but Amira didn't press. She waited until they were seated, and the waiter had walked away before speaking. "You want to talk about it?" Imani stirred her iced tea. "My mum was supposed to get married. I remember sitting in the living room in this frilly dress, waiting for the music to start. He never showed. Left a note and vanished." Amira's expression softened. "Damn, she never recovered," Imani continued. "I watched her lose herself, bit by bit, to the silence he left behind. I think I promised myself I'd never be that woman. But now, I'm afraid I might be." "You're not her," Amira said gently. "You're healing what she couldn't. That's not weakness, that's legacy." Imani looked out the window, eyes distant. "What if I walk down that aisle, and Elijah changes his mind? Then he'd be the biggest damn fool on the planet. But he won't." "How do you know?" "Because I see the way he looks at you. Like losing you once nearly killed him." Imani didn't speak. She just let the words settle. Deep down, she wanted to believe them. But belief took time. And time, she knew, had a way of testing even the strongest hearts. That night, she sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She pulled out her phone and opened her journal app. "Today, I saw myself in a wedding dress and saw my mother's ghost. I want to be brave. I want to believe in a love that stays. But sometimes, the past doesn't knock before it enters. Sometimes, it sits at the table like it never left." She closed the app, exhaled, and sent Elijah a message. "Can I come over?" His reply was instant. "Always." She grabbed her bag and left without even changing clothes. Some wounds don't need time. They need to be held. Elijah opened the door, already waiting. Imani stepped in without a word, and he didn't ask questions. He just wrapped his arms around her, steady and warm, the kind of embrace that didn't ask for explanations. They sat on the couch, the city humming quietly outside the windows. She leaned into him, knees curled beneath her, head resting against his shoulder. "I saw myself in a wedding dress today," she finally said, "and I couldn't breathe." He turned, slightly, looking at her but not interrupting. "I wanted to feel joy," she continued, "but all I could think about was my mum. She got left at the altar. I was 10, wearing a little pink dress, waiting to toss flowers at a man who never came. He left her with nothing but a note." Elijah's arm tightened around her. "I remember the silence that filled the house after that, like love wasn't just Ganit, never existed at all." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "So when you ask me to believe you'll stay, I want to, I do. But there's this voice in me, Elijah. And it says I'll end up like her." He pulled her into his lap, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other gripping her thigh like letting go would ruin him. "Then let me tell you something," he said. "You're not your mother, and I'm not that man, but I get it. I get why you're scared, and I don't expect that fear to disappear overnight. I just want to be the one who stays while it heals." Imani swallowed hard, tears spilling over. "You want the truth?" he asked, voice low. "There were times I thought I wasn't built for forever, that maybe I'd hurt every woman I loved because I didn't know how to stay. But the moment I saw you standing at that charity gala in that silver dress, laughing like nothing could break, why knew what? That you were the one I'd ruin myself for if I didn't choose you. So I'm choosing you, every damn day. Even on the days your voice tells you I won't." Imani buried her face in his neck, holding him like her whole world lived in his chest. And maybe it did. They sat like that for a long time. No TV, no music. Just breath and heartbeat and history unraveling in the safety of arms that meant it. Later, Elijah stood, took her hand, and led her to the bedroom, not out of desire, but out of something more intimate. He pulled back the covers, helped her out of her jacket, and tucked her in like she was fragile and made of gold. Then he slid in beside her and wrapped himself around her without a word. "You're staying," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "Always." And for the first time in years, she fell asleep without armor. The long oak table in Elijah's family home was dressed in white linen, gold utensils, and tall candles. It was the first official pre-wedding dinner, not an engagement party, not a rehearsal. Just both families breaking bread, introducing generations. Merging stories. Imani adjusted her emerald dress for the 5th time. Amira, seated beside her, whispered, "Girl, you look like a queen, relax." "Royalty still gets nervous," she muttered, across the table. Elijah stood near his mother. Ms. Rosa Monroe, dignified woman with skin like coppered mahogany, silver twists in her crown of braids, and an energy that could hush a room without a word. She wore power like perfume. Imani's mother, Denise, sat quietly at the end, her hands folded tight in her lap. Her smile was polite, distant, not cold, just guarded. Dinner began with clinking glasses and the rhythm of shared laughter. Stories. Flood Elijah's childhood memories, Amira's outrageous wedding predictions, Imani's little brother tossing jokes like confetti. But under the surface, currents moved. Denise barely touched her plate. She kept her eyes on Imani, watching her closely, like trying to solve a puzzle. Finally, she spoke. "So, Elijah, I see you've built an empire." He smiled politely. "With the help of a lot of good people, and now you want to marry my daughter." His smile faltered just slightly. "I do." Denise's voice remained even. "That's a big step. Especially when your past has pages she hasn't even read yet." Imani's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Mom," she said sharply. Denise kept going. "I just want to be sure this isn't another case of a powerful man needing a woman to stabilize his chaos." Elijah looked directly at her. Calm, not defensive. "With all due respect, ma'am, Imani isn't here to clean up after me. She's the reason I became a man who deserved her." The table fell into silence. Even the candles seemed to lean in. Denise leaned back, blinking like she hadn't expected that answer. Ms. Rosa finally spoke. "I know a storm when I see one. And I also know when someone's already survived one. Your daughter doesn't need protection. She needs celebration." Imani reached for Elijah's hand under the table. He squeezed back after dinner. They stepped outside for air. Crickets hummed, and the warm summer breeze wrapped around them. "I'm sorry about my mother," Imani said, arms folded. "Don't be. She's protective. She has every right to be." Imani stared at the stars. "Sometimes I forget how much of me she's still afraid will be broken." Elijah moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Let me help show her you won't be." They stood there, swaying slightly, forehead against cheek. Silence, loud but safe. "She scared me," Imani admitted. "I know," he whispered. "But you didn't flinch. That's growth, baby." She turned in his arms. "I need to know something, anything. If I ever start to lose myself in this, if I ever become someone I don't recognize, trying to hold on to, you pull me back." He smiled. "No, I'll sit beside you in the dark, until you're ready to come back on your own." Imani kissed him, and in that kiss, there was no audience, no family, no future wedding, just a promise that even their storms would be shared. Elijah sat at his desk, the city skyline stretching out in the distance behind him, glowing in the fading light. His inbox was overflowing. The day's meetings a blur, but the envelope on his desk pulled at his focus like a weight on his chest. It was cream-colored, handwritten, no return address. Just his full name on the front, Elijah David Monroe. He knew the handwriting. Even after all these years, he opened it slowly, careful not to tear it. The letter was short, direct, and signed by a name he hadn't said out loud in years. Jade. She'd been the woman before Imani, the one he tried to make work. The one who walked away when she realized he couldn't give her his whole heart. The one who once told him, "You love someone else, you just haven't admitted it yet." The letter read, "Elijah, I know this will come as a surprise, But there's something I've been carrying alone that I can't keep to myself anymore. I'm not writing to interfere. I just think you deserve to know. You can decide what to do with it. Jade. Attached was a single photograph, a young boy, maybe 5, with dark curls and sharp eyes. Elijah's breath caught. No caption, no explanation, just the boy's face. And Elijah's eyes looking back at him that night. He didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, the photo resting on his chest, and a storm turning behind his ribs. If it was true, this child was his, then everything was about to change. He didn't want to keep secrets from Imani, not again. But this wasn't just about them. This was a child, and he had no answers yet. By morning, he'd made a decision. Arrived at his penthouse for breakfast, hair pulled into a high bun, oversized denim jacket hugging her frame. She smiled when he opened the door, but the smile faltered when she saw his face. You look like you didn't sleep. I didn't. She stepped in slowly. What's wrong? Elijah reached for the envelope on the table. I need to show you something. She sat beside him on the couch, the photo resting between them like a live wire. I got this yesterday, he said. It's from someone I used to know, before you. Her name's Jade. We weren't together long, but I cared about her. She left without much closure. Imani picked up the photo, staring at the boy's face. Is this I? Don't know, Elijah said. But I'm going to find out. If he's mine, I'm not walking away from him. Imani's throat tightened. Do you want him to be yours? I didn't plan this, but I'm not running from it either. She nodded, quiet. Her fingers traced the edge of the envelope. You told me everything before. Why didn't you tell me about her? She was never more than a scar that faded. I never thought she'd come back. And I never thought she'd come back with this. Imani looked at the boy again. He has. Your eyes, I know. She set the photo down and stood, walking to the window. Elijah followed. This doesn't change how I feel about you, he said, his voice firm. But it might change what our future looks like. And I need to know if you're still in this with me. She turned slowly. I've loved you through the worst of your silence. I can love you through the truth. His chest broke open. He reached for her hands. I just need one thing, she added. No more pieces of your past hiding in envelopes. If there's anything else, I need it now. There's nothing else, he promised. This is it, and I'll face it with you, if you'll stay. She wrapped her arms around him, resting her head on his chest. I'm not leaving, she said. But if this boy is yours, then we'll raise him like he's ours. Elijah closed his eyes, a tear slipping free. In that moment, he knew love wasn't just romance, it was partnership. It was choosing each other when life showed up uninvited, and they were ready. The test arrived in a white envelope, sealed tight and stamped with clinical authority. Elijah stared at it from across his desk. His hands were steady, but his heart wasn't. Imani sat beside him, legs crossed, gaze fixed on his face instead of the envelope. Ready? She asked. He nodded. Tore it open. He read the words quietly. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. He exhaled through his nose. A long, slow release. Imani placed her hand gently on his back. He's yours, she whispered. Elijah's chest lifted, then dropped again, like something uncoiled inside him. I knew it, but seeing it, it's different. You okay? No, but I will be. He turned toward her. He's 5. That's 5 years I wasn't there. I have to make it up. You don't have to make up time, she said. You just have to show up now, he nodded. And I want him to know where he comes from, what he can become. The following week, Elijah arranged for Isaiah to visit his world, a world of glass walls, skyscrapers, and wealth Isaiah had never seen. Imani picked Isaiah up that morning, while Elijah finalized a private floor at Monroe Global HQ. The little boy walked into the penthouse lobby with wide eyes. This whole place is yours, he whispered. Elijah crouched beside him. Part of it. Want to see your dad's office? Isaiah blinked. You said dad. Elijah hesitated. Is that okay? The boy nodded slowly. Can I call you that? Elijah's eyes watered. He pulled Isaiah into a tight hug. Yeah, you can call me that any time. Upstairs, Isaiah marveled at everything. The sleek floors, the massive windows, the basketball court-sized office, the espresso machine. Imani sat him at the massive desk and slid a notepad toward him. You're the boss today. He grinned and scribbled something in purple crayon. But not everyone was smiling. From across the lobby, Genevieve Langston, Elijah's longtime investor and Monroe board chairwoman, stood in quiet disapproval. Her lips were painted in corporate crimson. Her eyes moved between Isaiah and Imani like they were invaders in a kingdom she funded. Later, she cornered Elijah near the elevator. You're distracted, she said. I'm living, he replied. Calmly unvetted women, mystery children, it's a pattern with men like you. He squared his shoulders. This isn't a PR problem, Genevieve. It's my son, and the woman I'm going to marry. She tilted her head. Then start protecting them, because not everyone in these boardrooms wants a fairy tale. He watched her walk away, her words heavy with warning. When he returned to the office, Imani was showing Isaiah how to spin in the executive chair. The boy laughed, dizzy and delighted. Elijah paused in the doorway, taking in the moment, then walked in, lifted Isaiah onto his lap, and whispered, "Want to see something cooler than a big office?" Isaiah nodded. Elijah pointed to Imani. That's your future stepmom, and she's the real boss. Imani blushed, her eyes soft with tears. Isaiah smiled. I like her. Me too, Elijah said. But outside the walls of joy, things stirred. Genevieve wasn't the only one watching. Someone else had seen the boy's photo leaked online. Someone with a grudge, a plan, and no mercy left to give Elijah Monroe, and soon, they'd make their move. The engagement announcement was set for Saturday night. Black tie, candlelight, no press, just family, closest friends, and partners who had stood with Elijah through years of empire building. Imani stood in front of the mirror, zipping up the deep wine-colored gown Amira had helped her pick out. Her curls were pinned to perfection, her eyes glowing. You sure you're ready for this? Amira asked, standing behind her in a black satin bridesmaid dress. I don't think anyone's ever ready, Imani replied, but I've never been more certain. Amira smirked. Girl, you're about to be Mrs. Monroe. You better own every step of that runway. Downstairs, Elijah adjusted his cufflinks, nervously pacing the edge of the private ballroom. He'd been on magazine covers, spoken at summits, negotiated million-dollar deals. But nothing had ever made his palms sweat like this. The ballroom glittered with warm lights and golden accents. Isaiah sat at a smaller table nearby, swinging his feet, dressed in a tiny tux. Imani entered, and, for a moment, Elijah forgot how to breathe. All eyes turned, and for just 1 hour, everything was perfect. Until it wasn't. Genevieve raised her glass near the head table. To our beloved CEO, who continues to prove that power and love can coexist. Polite applause followed, but beneath her words was a tone only Elijah could catch too smooth. To rehearsed, Imani stood to speak next. Her voice trembled for a second, then found its rhythm. I didn't grow up imagining this, she began. Not the dress, not the ring. Definitely not the penthouse love story. But I did grow up believing in something that money can't buy, presence. I watched my father work 2 jobs, just to be home by 6 p.m. for dinner. I watched my mum pray through storms and still have room to laugh. So when Elijah came into my life, I didn't fall in love with what he had. I fell in love with what he gave. Elijah reached for her hand. And now, she continued, I'm ready to give that back. The crowd stood in applause. But just as Elijah stepped forward to kiss her, a security guard rushed to his side and whispered something urgently in his ear. His face changed instantly. He looked to the head of security across the room. They nodded. Elijah, Imani asked, confused that. He whispered, give me a second. Don't move. He stepped away quickly, disappearing through the side exit. 5 minutes later, Amira showed Imani the headline flashing across her phone, breaking. Monroe CEO's hidden Sun-leaked custody files reveals secret deal with former mistress. Imani felt her knees weaken. The ballroom buzzed, phones lit up. Whispers began. She backed away from the crowd, heart pounding. Genevieve stood calmly near the bar, sipping champagne. "You should sit down," she said smoothly. "Looks like the fairy tale hit a bump." "What did you do?" Imani asked, voice shaking. Genevieve raised a brow. "What I always do: protect shareholders and remind Elijah who really controls his story." Imani's fists clenched. "He's a father now. You think leaking his son's identity makes you powerful? I think reminding men like Elijah that they owe the world everything keeps them useful." Imani stared at her, unblinking. "He doesn't owe the world. He owes that boy, and he owes me." Backstage, Elijah threw his phone down, furious. "I signed nothing. There's no custody deal. Jade and I agreed on trust." His security chief nodded. "We believe the leak came from inside." Elijah froze. "Genevieve," he muttered. He turned sharply, storming back into the ballroom. Imani met him halfway. "We're leaving," she said. "I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to Isaiah later. Right now, we protect him." He stared at her, stunned. "You still want this? I didn't come this far to run when the picture got cracked." They walked out together, fingers intertwined, eyes forward. Behind them, Genevieve watched with cold calculation. This wasn't over. The media frenzy exploded overnight. Headlines everywhere. Secret son of billionaire CEO exposed. Is Monroe Global in crisis? Who is the woman who captured the king? Cameras swarmed outside Elijah's penthouse. Paparazzi waited at Imani's building. And Isaiah, barely 5, couldn't understand why his face was suddenly on a screen. Imani sat beside him on the floor, using crayons to distract him, drawing dinosaurs and smiley faces. "Elijah will fix this," she told him gently. "But no matter what, you are not a secret. You are someone worth celebrating." Elijah stormed into his office that afternoon, wearing all black. His jaw was locked. His eyes burned. "Get me Genevieve," he told his assistant. "She's in London for a board retreat. She leaked private documents, ruined my family's moment, and dragged a child into her power games. If the board thinks I'll stay quiet, they don't know me at all." He called an emergency press conference. Standing at the podium, Elijah didn't read from a script. "My name is Elijah Monroe. Yes, I have a son. And no, I didn't know about him until weeks ago. But from the moment I saw him, I knew he was mine, and I'll protect him with my life." He paused, scanning the crowd. "I'm not ashamed. I'm a father. I'm also a man in love with a woman who didn't ask for this spotlight, but walked into it with grace." He looked straight into the camera. "Imani Fields, thank you for standing beside me when it would have been easier to walk away. I will spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Back home, Imani watched the speech on her phone, tears brimming. Then another notification came in. From Jordan. Her ex-fiancé saw the news. "I'm in town for a week, can we talk?" "No pressure, just old friends." She stared at the message for a while, not because she missed him but because he was part of a life she'd nearly chosen before everything changed. Elijah walked in as she set her phone down. "You okay?" "Yeah," she smiled, "just closing old tabs." He pulled her into his arms. "I don't know what comes next. The board might turn. Genevieve will try something again." "I don't care about the board," she whispered. "I care about who you are at home." He kissed her forehead. "Then let's protect that." That night, they took Isaiah to a quiet beach outside the city. No phones, no cameras, just them. They built sandcastles under moonlight, roasted marshmallows by a pit, and watched stars blink awake above them. Imani cradled Isaiah as he fell asleep in her arms. Elijah wrapped a blanket around them both. "You sure this is the life you want?" he asked. "It's messy," she replied. "It's complicated, it's loud." She looked up at him. "But yes, I'm sure, because it's real." He leaned in and kissed her slowly. And just like that, love chose them again, even when the world didn't.